Howdy, folks. It's your boy Max Mogren going live for you from beautiful Alpine, Wyoming. Wake Up News. This is Wake Up Wyoming. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully, we get some viewers. My video didn't go live, having some technical difficulties today. Hopefully, we're not getting messed with here at Wake Up Wyoming. Wouldn't be the first time we've had technical difficulties. Good. We've got some viewers. Thank you for tuning in. I just tried to go live. It didn't work. Let's get right into it. As usual, today we're looking at the local paper, the Jackson Hole Daily. Now, this paper services the wealthiest county per capita in the United States. Okay, so this is what some of the wealthiest and most influential people are reading when they're at their fifth vacation home, right? But it's a good paper as far as papers go. I don't mean to disparage the fine folks. I got friends that work there, but it's mainstream media and it's on the public record, so we're going to shred it as usual. 48 pages, about 70% ads, 20% fluff, 10% news, but not really news. We got 32 viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in. Give us some likes, give us some shares. Last video got 12,000 views, 82 shares, about 200 likes. Really appreciate all you tuning in, all the support, all your comments. Again, I can't stress enough, your comments don't show up for me, and it's super frustrating. I can't see any comments. There's 2 comments. I can't see them. It's very frustrating. Well, let's get right into it. Today, Friday, July 28th, I'm also going to be looking at about 20 stories on the smartphone that are quite a bit more informative than what you find in the paper today, and a few books as well. We love books here at Wake Up Wyoming. Delay sought on fracking decision, Denver, AP. Okay, we all know fracking, super bad, pollutes the groundwater, causes earthquakes, keeps us addicted to fossil fuels, which were rendered obsolete 120 years ago by the visionary inventor Nikola Tesla, justifies pipelines, basically the dumbest thing ever. What's going on with fracking? The Trump administration asked 3 federal judges from the 10th U.S. District Court of Appeals on Thursday to hold off on a decision regarding a major federal fracking rule implemented by the Obama administration. In March, Trump moved to roll back the rule, which was first issued in 2015 by the Interior Department and required drilling companies to disclose what chemicals they used within 30 days of any fracking. Okay, it would be nice if we knew what they were pumping into the ground all over the country, right? But we don't. Under Cheney, when all this fracking really got going at the tail end of the Bush administration, they didn't have to disclose what they were pumping into the ground. It was put on hold last year, so they don't have to disclose, after a federal district judge in Wyoming and the BLM had said the BLM had no authority to set such a rule. In a court hearing Thursday, the government asked judges not to decide on the case and instead leave the district court's current ruling in effect until it can replace the rule. The replacement process could take how long? Up to 5 years, according to Michael Freeman, an environmental attorney at the hearing, because the government would need to go through a series of legal processes that would include receiving comments from the public. Since replacement could be years away, the BLM has asked to keep the district court's current decision in place until a new rule is implemented. An American Indian tribe, I wonder which tribe that is, the states of Colorado, North Dakota, Utah, and Wyoming say the rules developed under Obama duplicate state regulations and would cost jobs. Heaven forbid we stop fracking so damn much. The United States has seen an uptick in fracking since 2010. No date has been set for the court's final decision. So, extremely disturbing. We don't know what they're pumping into our groundwater. Sad that frackers are able to cause earthquakes, pollute water, build pipelines, and really keep us addicted to oil long past when it's necessary. It's funny, in other more inspiring news today, what are they doing in China? You can see it there. China's building 100 Panda-Shaped solar farms. Okay, why aren't we doing stuff that fun here in the U.S., right? I'll read you a quick little story here. We'll just kind of bounce back and forth. Paw Power from Reuters. China plans 100 Panda-Shaped solar plants along New Silk Road. In a country where you can find everything from chopsticks to slippers designed to look like pandas, one Chinese energy company is going a step further by building 100 solar farms shaped like panda bears along the route of an ambitious Belt and Road initiative. Panda Green Energy Group has already connected one 50-megawatt plant to the grid in the northern province of Shaanxi the first step in a public relations stunt that emphasizes the cuddly side of the world's number 2 economy. Okay, I think arguably China is a bigger economy than the U.S. When it comes to actually manufacturing things, whereas the U.S. just blows things up. You know, the world's largest drug dealer and arms dealer is Uncle Sam. So it's pretty cool to see the Chinese making some legitimate investments in sustainable energy practices. Here in the U.S., more fracking. And no, they don't need to disclose what chemicals are in there. Okay, local news, a lot of ads. Here we go. This is going to be good. Yellowstone denizens portrayed in new book. The rugged scenery makes Yellowstone National Park, but the people who live there keep the park alive. In People of Yellowstone, photographer Steve Horn and writer Ruth W. Crocker highlight those who keep the park functioning and who love living in one of America's most treasured and pristine areas. Okay? Just as an aside here, I'm looking at my comments. I've got 6 comments, but I can't see any of them. I really appreciate all your comments, but I can't interact with you because they're not showing me comments. I got 7 now. But so a new book about the people of Yellowstone. It's a photo essay about the park and all the people that live up there, right? It's important to note that prior to the development of Yellowstone National Park in 1872, there already were a lot of people up there. Mountain Spirit, the sheep eater Indians of Yellowstone. Okay, these people were some certified badasses. They spent about 12,000 years living up there around the geysers in the high mountains, living off the land sustainably. And what happened? The government came in 1872, stole all that land because why? Did they really want to make a big national park there? No, there was nobody there. There were no roads, there were no towns, there weren't even any railroads anywhere near Yellowstone. It was wild, you know, it was natural. And the sheep eaters, the Tugadika tribe of the Shoshone, were living there. They've been living there peacefully for 12,000 years. So if you want to talk about the people of Yellowstone, learn about the sheep eaters. Fascinatingly, I mean, these people were utterly incredible. And I'll read a short little excerpt here. It is interesting that prior to the creation of Yellowstone National Park in 1872, none of the accounts of trappers, Indian agents, and missionaries described the sheep eaters as diminutive or commented on their lack of intelligence. Okay, there are all these quotes from early administrators in the park about how these natives were these miserable pygmy savages, to demonize them, to justify kicking them off of the land they've been inhabiting for 12,000 years. Quite the opposite is true, which suggests that the Department of the Interior had a vested interest in applying considerable negative spin to earlier perceptions of sheep eater capabilities and attitudes as an excuse ultimately to ban their presence in the park. Government pressure to control the Indian use of Yellowstone intensified in 1877 following the capture of a party of white people by a group of Napersay traveling through the park. Okay, so know your history. Yellowstone, you know, they talk about how Yellowstone is like this pristine, complete ecosystem, but it's not. It's Jellystone National Park, home of Yogi Bear. Millions and millions of people drive through there every year in their vehicles. It's not a pristine, intact ecosystem. If it was, the sheep eater would still be living there because they were there for 12,000 years doing their thing in harmony with nature. Also, interestingly, while we're on the topic of Yellowstone, playing God in Yellowstone, it turns out, you know, people go to Yellowstone to see the bison, the elk, the bears, all this stuff. Prior to the white man's mismanagement of Yellowstone, there were no bison in Yellowstone. There were no elk in Yellowstone. It's an extremely rough climate for those animals to live in. What were up there were a lot of beaver, a whole lot of beaver. And I'll just read you a short excerpt out of this excellent book, Playing God in Yellowstone by Alston Chase. You know, we're given this impression that Yellowstone is like the bee's knees, the epitome of ecological actions by the government in the U.S., but it's not. Okay, they stole it from the sheep eaters so they could shelve it because it's the world's largest accessible continental geothermal energy resource. Can't stress that enough. Back in 1872, when Yellowstone was stolen, we lived in a steam-powered economy, right? Obviously, the largest steam resource in the country, Uncle Sam wanted to get his mitts on that, right? But going back to the whole ecosystem in Yellowstone, elk in particular, these witnesses were convinced, were not year-round residents in Yellowstone. They had no evidence that these animals had ever wintered in the park, and they knew that nearly all early explorers of Yellowstone had trouble finding game even in summer. For although the first visitors to the plateau saw and heard many grizzlies and mountain lions, they often traveled long distances without finding elk or deer. In 1856, Scout Jim Bridger warned explorer Captain William F. Reynolds not to try to traverse the Yellowstone Plateau because he would find nothing to eat. This is a good quote from Jim Bridger. "A bird can't fly over that," he warned, "without taking a supply of grub along." In 1870, the Langford expedition found little to eat during the last 4 weeks of his trip throughout the park. The Hayden expedition of 1871, this was a government expedition just prior to them taking the land, though it employed professional hunters, reported finding only one animal, a mule deer, on the entire trip. The party of Captains Barlow and Heap, Army engineers who explored the park in 1871, exhausted their food 8 days before the end of their trip and had to send out for more. The 1873 party, led by Army engineer William A. Jones, also ran out of food and had to be resupplied from Fort Ellis, 100 miles away. Blah, 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 it goes on. And basically all the elk and, the elk and bison were introduced into Yellowstone back when it was managed by the Army, because they were getting killed off. It was like there was the native genocide, but there was also just the wholesale slaughter of all the bison. That was part of the native genocide. And elk. There used to be bison and elk across the entire continent, right? The Great Plains were created by the natives through controlled burns to keep their herds of bison, wild bison, happy. They created the grasslands. And when white people showed up, what did we do? Well, we killed all the natives. We killed all their food supply. So Yellowstone became one of the few places where all these animals were safe, and the government kept them there. But moving along, like I said, if you want to know about the true people of Yellowstone, don't bother picking up this new book, but get yourself Mountain Spirit, the Sheep Eater Indians of Yellowstone. Incredible people. Incredible story. Moving along to the opinion section here in the JH Daily. We got more fluff on, it's just Trump bash all day, every day in the mainstream media. It's shocking. This is about the not issue of transgender troops in the military. This big nonsense, but I can't stress it enough. It's just Trump bashing open season here. Interestingly, we got another story on the transgender troop issue in the military. I don't care what gender you are in the military. I don't think anybody really does. But I'm more concerned about what the military is doing all over the world, killing people, intimidating people, terrorizing people, etc., etc. I looked up a story today. I wanted to find out, they're making such a big stink about this transgender thing in the military. So I wanted to find out how many people in the military are actually transgender. And they threw out this statistic, 15,000. There's 15,000 transgender people in the military, they say. But that's not true. A 2016 study by RAND Corporation, commissioned by the Pentagon, reported lower figures than the UCLA study, where they estimated 15,000 transgender troops. The RAND researchers estimated between 1,320 and 6,600 active duty, and between 830 and 4,160 in the reserves. That would be a total between 2,150 and 10,790, based on figures of people serving in the military in 2014. So there's somewhere between 2,000 and 11,000 transgender troops estimated in the military. Out of how many millions of troops? I don't know. But point is, it's not news. It's a distraction. It's a diversion. It's a not issue, right? And the notion, and then it's like, oh, and the military has to pay for their sex change operations and their hormone therapy. It's just to divide us. It's just to distract us. That's all it is. Total nonsense. And we got at least 2 or 3 stories in the Jacksonville Daily devoted to that today. Moving on to real news. Worsening U.S. drought conditions stress crops. Des Moines, Iowa. Drought conditions worsened in several states over the past week from extreme heat and weeks with little rain, raising the prospect that grocery staples such as bread and beans could cost more as the region that produces those commodities is hardest hit. Drought conditions have begun to stress corn, soybeans, wheat, and livestock in some areas, according to the weekly U.S. Drought Monitor released Thursday by the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. Nearly 11% of the continental U.S. is in moderate drought or worse, said Richard Hine, a meteorologist for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, in this week's drought summary. About half of the nation's spring wheat, 13% of its winter wheat, 15% of its corn, and 14% of its soybeans are in drought, the report said. There have been people who have been in business for 5 decades who have said they've never seen conditions like this, North Dakota Agricultural Commissioner Doug Goring said. Okay, so drought. We got a drought in the Midwest. We had a big drought in Texas for about 5 years. We had a big drought in California for about 5 years that thankfully just ended with that huge, beautiful, snowy, sexy winter they had in the Sierra Nevada range, right? Thank God, because it kept the Californians out there skiing instead of coming here to Wyoming and tracking up our powder. But the point is, quit laughing at me. Sorry, I got a friend downstairs laughing at me. But the point is, we have the technology to manipulate the weather. We've had it for a very long time. It has been implemented. According to the World Meteorological Organization in 2013, there were 54 sovereign nations, big countries too, like Chile, Argentina, Germany, France, the UK, China, Canada, Mexico, etc., all have national level weather modification programs. Now here in the U.S., there are dozens of other entities, private entities, that engage in weather modification programs. Notably absent from that list of 53 countries published by the World Meteorological Organization in 2013 is the United States. Even though the U.S. developed these technologies, has used these technologies in the past, and used them as a weapon during the Vietnam War, making it rain. We have the power to make it rain. We have the power to steer storms. Unfortunately, it's a big secret. It's all wrapped up in the whole climate change agenda, and the mainstream media happily on board with the notion that these technologies could only possibly be used to mitigate climate change, right? Well, that's a climate changing technology, and they've been around for a very long time. We see evidence of them in the skies overhead every day, where the planes leave the big lingering spreading trails, and it'd be nice if we stopped this drought. You know, these technologies could be used for a lot of good, potentially, if they were used with public oversight. But sad to see this drought here. Fortunately, most of the stuff that's being affected is not food you want to eat anyway, right? Most of the wheat is either GMO and or contaminated with glyphosate, which kills people. Turns out humans didn't recently become allergic to wheat. It's been the staple of the human diet in the Western world for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, right? So why the heck are all these people gluten intolerant now? Why are all these people having trouble with wheat? Maybe it's because they spray it with a bunch of poison right before they harvest it. Right? And here in this country, most of the corn grown, I think it's about 90% of the corn grown, is GMO. You don't want to eat that shit either. So, that brings us to headline number 2. Why are 38% of Americans obese? This is coming out of Zero Hedge today. Pretty shocking statistics here. Let me find this one, because while we're on the topic of food, we can get into this. Headline from Zero Hedge today, from our dear friend Tyler Durden of Fight Club. Winning, U.S. crushes all other countries in latest obesity study. When President Trump promised last fall that under a Trump administration, America would win so much, you'll get tired of winning, we suspect this is not what he had in mind. According to the latest international obesity study From the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, America is by far the fattest nation in the world, with just over 38% of the adult population considered obese. Okay? To put that into perspective, Mexico's number 2 with 32.4%, New Zealand 30.7%, Hungary 30%, Australia 27.9%, the UK 26.9%, Canada 25.8%. Love those Canadian women. Chile 25.1%, and it just goes on and on. Interestingly, Japan seems to be the lowest with 3.7%. Okay, why have Americans gotten so damn fat in the last couple decades? I would love to see your answers to this, but I can't see my comments. It's pretty frustrating. But I would have to say that Americans have gotten so fat in the last couple decades is because our food is being poisoned. The cheapest food, the food most people can afford, is garbage, right? You can go to the store and get yourself a 12-pack of Coke for $3. But, you want to get something healthy, it's going to cost you a lot more than that. You can go to McDonald's and get yourself a garbage burger with a, supersized garbage burger with fries and an extra large Coke. Free refills for what? $5, $6? But if you want to go get like a healthy salad at a restaurant where the food is actually good for you, it'll probably cost you $15, $20. Why is that? Well, it's built into the system. Not surprisingly, American healthcare costs are almost double the global average for developed countries as a factor of GDP. And given that we have the highest GDP in the world, apparently, that's a lot of money being spent on healthcare. So it's sad. If you want to see something crazy, this is something I like to do once in a while. Go, if you're in school, you're in college or high school or whatever, or you go to a library, go look at old yearbooks, right? Go look at what kids in high school and college used to look like back in the 70s, back in the 80s, back in the 60s. And you'll see that Americans used to look normal. We didn't have all these obesity problems, right? And yeah, you can blame it on TV, you can blame it on the internet, you can blame it on people just being lazy, but I'd say there's more to it than that. I'd say there's a lot more to it than that. So, moving on, I think we've answered that question. In the national and international news, we got more drama and distractions, more Trump bashing, Sessions won't exit unless asked. Of course, we got to talk about the transgenders in the military again. Got to put a bunch into that. So that's just a distraction and a divisive issue. Like nobody, it's just something that's designed to make people miserable, make people divided. Moving on. Sanctions against Russia, Iran, and North Korea. The Senate has approved a new package of stiff financial sanctions against Russia, Iran, and North Korea. The legislation now heads to President Trump. He's expected to sign it, even though the bill includes provisions that bar him from easing the penalties on Russia without first getting permission from Congress. Trump has privately expressed frustrations over Congress's ability to limit or override his power on national security matters. But he has little choice but to sign the bill due to the enormous support for the measure on Capitol Hill. Senators voted 98-2 to pass the sanctions bill Thursday, 2 days after the House cleared the legislation, 419-3. Okay, so economic sanctions against Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Interestingly, our friends in Russia there they just signed a deal with Syria. I don't know if you know this, but the whole fight in Syria, it's not a civil war. That's been well established. Check out globalresearch.ca's coverage on the issue. We make it out, the Western media makes it out like the Russians are committing these atrocities there, but actually it's the U.S. and our terrorist army, ISIS, right? We funded, trained, and support ISIS and the opposition in the so-called Syrian civil war, which Syria and their partner Russia appear to be winning. Now in the U.S., we get all this fluff there, but who really are the friends of the Syrian people? Well, according to Reuters today, Putin just signs a deal with Syria, cementing Russia's presence there for half a century. Okay, Syria and Russia are truly allies. President Vladimir Putin has signed a law ratifying a deal with the Syrian government, allowing Russia to keep its airbase in Syria for almost half a century, official documents show. The original deal, signed in Damascus in January, sets out the terms under which Russia can use its Crimean, something like that, airbase in Latakia province, which it has used to carry out airstrikes against forces opposing President Bashar al-Assad. Okay, the forces opposing President Bashar al-Assad are the U.S. and our proxy armies like ISIS. Putin approved the agreement on Wednesday after the two chambers of the Russian parliament backed it earlier this month, according to the government's official information portal. What do we have for an information portal in the U.S.? Well, apparently it's Donald Trump's Twitter account. The document says Russian forces will be deployed at the base for 49 years with the option of extending the arrangement for 25-year periods. The base has been at the heart of Moscow's military foray since it intervened in the conflict in September 2015, helping turn the tide in favor of Assad, one of Russia's closest Middle East allies. Okay, so good to cover Syria a little. Our hearts go out to all you Syrian people. It feels so bad that our country has been blowing up your country and staging a proxy war there. Sorry. Oh, more drama from Trump. Spending bill. The House passed a $788 billion spending bill Thursday that combines a $1.6 billion down payment on President Trump's controversial border wall between the U.S. and Mexico, with a whopping budget increase for who? For schools? No. For Medicare? No. For the No Child Left Behind program or whatever? No. It's going to the Pentagon, of course. A whopping budget increase for the Pentagon. The 235 to 192 vote eases a large backlog of unfinished spending bills and gives Trump and his House GOP allies political wins heading into the Congress's much-deserved August recess. Lord knows they work so hard there in the halls of Congress. The 326-page measure would make good on longtime GOP promises to reverse an erosion in military readiness, giving programs for veterans a 5% budget increase and funding a 2.4% military pay increase, keeping them going. GOP leaders used the popularity of the Pentagon and veterans programs to push Trump's border wall through. Every single dime the president requested to start building a wall on our southern border, he's going to get, said House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, Republican from California. A potential government shutdown battle over the wall looms with Senate Democrats this fall. The defense spending increases also run afoul of strict spending limits set by an earlier budget law, and there's no progress on a bipartisan budget deal that would be a prerequisite for higher spending to take full effect. Okay, see the terminology there. Defense spending. The Pentagon is the Department of Defense, right? Back in World War II, it was called the Department of War because we were waging war all over the world back then, just like we are now. Okay, it's semantics. Department of Defense. It's not about defense. It's about aggression. Moving along. So $788 billion, including $1.6 billion down payment on Trump's border wall. It's too bad we can't take all that money and instead of giving it to the Pentagon to go blow shit up, instead of using it to build a border wall, we could be using it to improve America's ailing infrastructure, create jobs here that actually benefit Americans on American soil. Wouldn't that be a novel concept? Thank you for all the comments. 28 comments. I can't see any of them. But please show your support. Ask your questions. Correct me if I'm wrong about something, and I'll go through after this video and get to the comments. Thank you. Hillary Clinton is writing a book, her new book called What Happened, and promises unprecedented candor as she remembers her stunning defeat last year to Donald Trump. Now free from the constraints of running, Hillary takes you inside the intense personal experience of becoming the first woman nominated for president by a major party In an election marked by rage, sexism, exhilarating highs, and infuriating lows. Stranger than fiction twists, Russian interference, and an opponent who broke all the rules is in the official press release from Scheinman and Schuster. Okay. In the real news today, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm certainly not a Hillary supporter. I know that Republicans and Democrats are two wings of the same rabid, cancerous, fucked up bird. But it's important to note that we got an article today from paulcraigroberts.org. Came out today about the conspiracy to remove Trump from the presidency. Paul Craig Roberts, been in the government a long time. Highly recommend his work. Smart guy. Actually, this came out on July 24th. But U.S. intelligence services, the Democratic Party, some Republicans, including members of President Trump's own government, and the prostitute U.S. media are conspiring against American democracy and the President of the United States. We know this from a public letter to Trump published today, July 24th, on consortiumnews.com by veteran intelligence professionals for sanity. Unlike the CIA, NSA, and FBI, the veteran intelligence professionals, all retired, of course, perform forensic investigations. They found conclusive evidence that the alleged Guccifer 2.0 July 5th, 2016 intrusion into the Democratic National Convention server, showcasing the emails that show that the DNC working for Hillary against Sanders. Okay, we can't stress that enough. The people, the Democrats, the people really wanted Bernie Sanders as their candidate, right? Bernie had a shitload of support. Just like in the previous election, Ron Paul had a shitload of support from Republicans, right? It's classic. But what happened in 2012? Ron Paul got sabotaged by his own party. In 2016, Bernie Sanders got sabotaged by his own party. And these leaked emails that they blame the Russians for hacking showcase the fact that the Democratic Party sabotaged Sanders to support Clinton. Now, I don't really care. I don't think the elections matter that much, but it's interesting to note. And the leaked documents were not hacked, but leaked. The leaked documents were copied onto an external storage device and doctored with a cut and paste job to implicate Russia as having hacked the documents. In other words, the alleged hack was instead a copy from the inside that was subsequently doctored to reflect Russian origin. The veteran intelligence professionals surmised that this was done in order to focus attention away from the embarrassing content of the emails, placing attention instead on Russian interference in the U.S. presidential election. Okay? So Hillary's new memoir, I highly recommend you don't read that book. But like I said, I'm not a Trump supporter. Trump is in office to divide us and distract us. I've got a great Time magazine from 1989 that came with my house when I moved in. This man may turn you green with envy or just turn you off. Flaunting it is the game, and Trump is the name. Okay, 1989. He's been a divisive figure in America for 30 years, right? And there's nothing new. It's funny, you read these old magazines, it's just the same shit decade after decade after decade. Interestingly, back then, we were friends with the Afghanis. Osama bin Laden was our boy. And now, he was, he's long gone now. But it's important to note, too, speaking of Trump and Afghanistan, New York Times coming out today with a very shocking story. Actually, this is 2 days old. Trump finds reason for the U.S. to remain in Afghanistan. Why? Minerals. Now, notice they're blaming Trump on this. If there's escalations of troops in Afghanistan, if we keep blowing them up 16 years into this illegal war of aggression in Afghanistan, they're going to blame it on Trump. But it's important to note, President Trump, searching for a reason to keep the United States in Afghanistan after 16 years of war, has latched onto the prospect that tantalized previous administrations. Afghanistan's vast mineral wealth, which his advisors and Afghan officials have told him could be profitably extracted by Western countries. It goes on, but it's disturbing. It's like they're not even trying to hide the fact that were in there to steal a bunch of shit. Let's see, where's a good quote? Well, I don't know, whatever. It's not that important. We all know this stuff. But the New York Times, this article is kind of interesting. They don't even try to sugarcoat it and pretend that we're in Afghanistan to defend freedom and spread democracy. They openly admit that it's all about stealing resources. And a great quote here, the old expression, to the victor belong the spoils, Mr. Trump declared. Do you remember? Okay. So they're not even trying to hide it, that they're invading these countries, killing all these people to steal resources. Disturbing. Let's see. Ooh, Venezuela. Speaking of another country where the U.S. and its corporations are meddling, I feel bad for the people of Venezuela who are dealing with hyperinflation and civil unrest as this shadowy coup goes on in their country. Days before a polarizing vote to start rewriting its constitution, Venezuela is convulsing to a rhythm of daytime strikes and nocturnal clashes. The most recent violence drove the death toll from nearly 4 months of unrest above 100 on Thursday. Sorry, Venezuela. Most of those who died in anti-government protests were young men killed by gunfire. The protests began after a Supreme Court ruling that stripped the opposition-controlled National Assembly of its remaining powers. Okay, opposition-controlled meaning U.S. supported, CIA supported, ExxonMobil supported, as we'll see in just a moment here. Though quickly reversed, the decision ignited a protest movement against socialist President Nicolas Maduro, fueled by anger over triple-digit inflation, hours-long lines to buy basic food items, and deadly medical shortages. Maduro posed the vote to rewrite the Constitution as a choice that Venezuelans must make between either being a free country or a colony of the empire. Una colonia del empire. Maduro's term for the United States. The opposition has called for a mass demonstration in Caracas today. Its leaders are urging Venezuelans to boycott the vote, arguing that a new constitution could replace democracy with a single-party authoritarian system. So they're reeling in Venezuela right now. Why? Well, they've had hyperinflation. They've been subject to economic sanctions from the U.S., just like Iran, North Korea, and Russia in that recently passed legislation. But that's nothing new. But what do we got from the Black Agenda Report? Okay, coming from the Black Agenda Report. And this was actually translated from Spanish. U.S. occupation of Venezuela has already begun and is being conducted by ExxonMobil, by Misión Verdad, the mission of truth. The U.S. and the world's largest corporation, ExxonMobil, have prioritized the overthrow of Venezuela's socialist government. Venezuela and neighboring Guyana claim sovereignty over one of the biggest oil discoveries of the last decade. ExxonMobil already finances much of the Venezuelan opposition movement. The company is now trying to maneuver into Guyana and politically and economically reconfigure the Caribbean basin to serve its purposes. Okay, if you want to read that whole article, it's long, it's good. It's on the Black Agenda Report. U.S. occupation has already begun and is being conducted by ExxonMobil. Okay. What was the name of the president in Venezuela? Chavez, is that right? Real shady circumstances surrounding his death. Teenager killed in Ohio State Fair ride accident. Okay, this is a good reminder. Don't waste your money at the fair, dude. Don't go ride a bunch of rickety old, nasty, puke-covered rides, right? These things break. If you want to spend money, if you want to waste money, donate it to the independent media. Can't stress it enough. Don't forget to tip your truth tenders. But I'm not going to get into that right now. Business. Speaking about money, business. Falling tech stocks ding record highs. U.S. stock indices pulled back from their record highs Thursday after an afternoon swoon for technology companies helped overshadow another big day for telecoms. The S&P 500 fell 0.1%, NASDAQ down 0.6%, Dow Jones Industrial Average rising 0.4%. Interestingly here, Twitter dropped. President Trump's microphone of choice, dropped $2.77 or 14.1%. That's a big daily drop for our friends there at Twitter to 1684. It reported better than expected quarterly results, but it also said that its monthly average user base did not grow from the prior quarter. So interesting to see Twitter dropping 14%. I don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on Twitter, I guess. But on and on, Verizon and AT&T doing really well. Verizon up 7.7% by ripping us off on cell phone service. Blah, blah, blah. We all know the stock market's rigged. Federal Reserve gifts $85 billion a month to the corrupt, failing government and the fundamentally flawed financial system to make it look like everything's fine. Okay. Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos briefly became the world's richest man Thursday in Forbes magazine's tracking of wealth, as stock in his e-commerce company hit an all-time high. Microsoft founder Bill Gates reclaimed the lead by the afternoon when Amazon stock fell nearly 1% for the day to $1,046. Shares fell another 2% in aftermarket trading as the company reported net income of $197 million in the second quarter, down from $857 million a year ago. Amazon shares have been trading at record highs. They hit $1,083.31 at about noon Thursday. According to securities filings, Bezos owns about 80 million shares, or 17%. Those shares were valued at more than $87 billion at the peak. Blah, blah, blah. It just goes on and on. Okay, Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates are not the wealthiest people in the world. Okay, they're not even close. Yeah, they might have $80, $90 billion, but these guys have only been making money for like 20, 30 years, right? How long has Amazon been around? 20 years? If that. Microsoft, what, 20 years, 30 years? These guys are not the wealthiest men in the world, okay? The families that control the global financial system are the wealthiest people in the world, by far. The Rothschild family has been controlling banking for about 200 years now. Their estimated net worth, conservative estimates put it at about $2 trillion. Okay, it's quite a bit more than 90 billion, right? I got an article here today from our dear friends at Activist Posts, I believe. Investopedia estimates the Rothschild family's total wealth at over $2 trillion in assets and holdings, including some of the world's oldest living corporations. Their holdings span a number of diverse industries, including financial services, real estate, mining, energy, and even charitable work. There are a few Rothschild-owned financial institutions still operating in Europe, including NM Rothschild & Sons Ltd in the UK and Edmund de Rothschild Group in Switzerland. The family also owns more than a dozen wineries in North America, Europe, South America, South Africa, and Australia. At $2 trillion plus, the family's reported wealth is closing in on 5 times as much as the combined wealth of the world's top 8 individual billionaires, meaning that the Rothschild family alone controls more wealth than perhaps 3/4 or more of the world's total population. Okay, 7 to 8 billion people on the planet. Well, the Rothschild family has more money than 6 billion of them combined. So, contrary to mainstream lies, running an online store, the biggest online store in the world, granted, but being the CEO of the online store and being the CEO of Microsoft does not make you the richest person in the world within the matter of a couple of years. Okay, there's a lot of people with a lot more money than that. It wouldn't be nice if we could get our hands on it. There's your government hard at work. The FDA nixes opioid meant to deter abuse. I'm going to read this whole article because the opioid epidemic in the U.S. is a crisis. It's important to note that most of the opioids in the world are grown in Afghanistan. Maybe that's another reason why we're there. I don't know. Uncle Sam, largest drug dealer in the world. He has been for a very long time. FDA panel nixes opioid meant to deter abuse. So the FDA shutting down this thing. What's going on? Trenton, New Jersey. A panel of U.S. Food and Drug Administration advisors voted against approving a new opioid painkiller with a unique feature for deterring abuse. It releases a deep blue dye if someone tries to get high by crushing, chewing, or snorting the pills. Sounds pretty good. I wonder if it makes your poop blue. Panelists voted against improving Intello Pharmaceutical International's generic version of extended-release Oxycontin, a key drug in the U.S. opioid addiction epidemic. The FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, usually follows its advisors' advice. Scientists raised concerns about the dye's safety for intended patients and its effectiveness in deterring opioid abusers. Most said the company hadn't done enough studies of the drug, and some suggested that blue stains around the mouth or nose from trying to abuse the drug could become popular among addicts. Yeah, because everybody who's addicted to opium wants to be covered in blue around their face, so everybody knows. Others said the dye's scarlet letter shaming approach was insensitive. Insensitive to what? The needs of opioid abusing heroin addicts? Executives at Toronto-based Intello Pharmaceuticals said they believed the blue stains, which would take at least 30 minutes to scrub off the skin, would serve as a warning sign to family and friends that an opioid addict was abusing drugs. Makes sense. But the FDA advisors, a group of drug safety and pain management experts, voted 22-1 against recommending the agency approve sales of the pills. The panel said the company hadn't provided enough data to show that addicts couldn't find a way to convert the pill's active ingredient, oxycodone, into a liquid that could be injected. I'm pretty sure you can do that with any of these drugs. Advisors also noted that the company hadn't studied whether the blue dye would discourage abuse attempts. I can see Smurf parties and blue lollipops suddenly becoming popular, said Dr. Melinda Campopiano of the U.S. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Okay, so here we have it. This seems like a great idea, right? A pill, a painkiller. You know, some people need painkillers, but not a lot of the people that are taking them right now. A painkiller that releases a blue dye if you're snorting it or chewing it. You know, it's an extended release pill, so you're supposed to take it and it'll act over time, slowly. But if you chew it up, you're going to get higher, faster, you know, more intense opium low, I guess is what it would be. So this makes perfect sense to me. It's like, yeah, sounds like a brilliant idea. But sorry, the FDA panel 22-1 saying, no, we're not going to approve that drug. Sad. This video is getting long today. Thank you all for tuning in. We got 42 comments. Again, I can't see any of them. I'm sorry. Thank you all for your support. Please like, please share, please subscribe to notifications. We're moving on. Skipping the horoscope today because we ain't got time for that. Our world. Okay, this is just propaganda. Marine canine has fitting farewell. Nobody cares. A military dog died. A dog that was bomb sniffing during an illegal war in Afghanistan died. Nobody gives half a fuck that they gave it a funeral. Certainly not worth half a page of our newspaper. Another propaganda supporting the military. World War II vet, 96, gets wish of visiting U.S. Navy station. Once again, nobody gives a fuck about this. Okay, I can't stress enough. This is pure propaganda humanizing the inhumanity of the U.S. military. Okay, so a whole page devoted to military propaganda, not news. A dog died. Get over it. A vet visited a Navy station. Great. Thanks for sharing that with us, Jackson Hole Daily. We were all really concerned about that dog and that old guy. Moving on. Scientists in U.S. edit human embryo genes. Kind of disturbing. For the first time in the United States, scientists have edited the genes of human embryos, a controversial step towards someday helping babies avoid inherited diseases. The experiment was just an exercise in science. The embryos were not allowed to develop for more than a few days and were never intended to be implanted into a womb, according to MIT Technology Review, which first reported the news. Officials at Oregon Health and Science University confirmed Thursday that the research took place there and said the results would be published in a journal soon. It is thought to be the first such work in the U.S. Previous similar experiments have been reported in China. Okay, so they're not playing God with human embryos. They're just doing a little editing, kind of disturbing, if you ask me. Now the Jacksonville Daily, we're just into all the ads and distractions. Weather's supposed to be nice. Entertainment. Oh, we got a whole lot of fluff, not news. None of the comics are very funny. Didn't get a giggle out of me on any of them. And then we're into sports. Sports, the greatest distraction. Bread and circuses. Divisive as well. I would love to see your comments, but I can't. Talk about divisive actions. Censorship. My original feed today wouldn't even go live at all. Now I can't see your comments. It's very frustrating. And it's just ads, ads, ads. It's funny to note here, I should go back a bit. So like I said, this newspaper is about 70% advertising, 20% fluff, 10% news. And actually, once we hit page 20, from page 24 until 48, so basically the entire second half of the newspaper, there isn't a single piece of news in there aside from the weather. So we're done with that for today. I got some more stories for you. I know this video is getting long. Wake Up Wyoming group is messaging me. Let me see what they got to say real quick. Oh, that's long. Okay. Can't read that now. What else do we got? Oh, rents across the U.S. hit a new all-time high. After dropping to a new all-time low of 62.9% in quarter 2 of 2016, the U.S. home ownership rate rebounded modestly in the subsequent 2 quarters, then dropped again at the start of the year. Blah, blah, blah. Millennials have the lowest rate of home ownership, has declined from 43.6% in June 2004 to 35.3% in the latest quarter. So if not owning, what are America's young adults doing? According to separate data from Goldman Sachs, the share of 18 to 34-year-olds living with their parents is effectively at all-time highs. According to Goldman Sachs and the BLS, about 31% of 18 to 34-year-olds are living with their parents. There's a really interesting graphic here. I'm going to hold this up to the screen so you can see. This is the median asking rate for vacant rental units in the U.S. In 1988, the average was about $320. Interestingly, all right, Wake Up Wyoming, please stop messaging me right now. But look at this graph here real quick if you can see it. It was $320. The median price now, you can't really see it, but in 2017, it's over $900. Wages haven't gone up that much since '88, but the cost of renting a place to live has tripled. People wonder why it's so difficult for Americans to get ahead these days. Maybe it has something to do with rampant inflation. Total government and personal debt in the U.S. has hit $41 trillion. To put that into perspective, that's $329,961.34 per household. So start saving, peeps. You got to do your part. Interestingly, the UK is banning petrol and diesel vehicles as companies focus on electric cars. This is actually some good news. Remember, Trump, or the U.S., they blame it on Trump. But one of the reasons we're staying in Afghanistan, in addition to all the opium, is the resources. Afghanistan has some of the largest lithium deposits in the world. Lithium, an extremely important resource in the era of the electric car, which is coming. The UK is set to ban all petrol and diesel cars, but in the year 2040. Ministers will unveil a fund of $332 million to help councils take measures to deal with pollution from diesel vehicles. Okay, so electric cars banned in the UK in 2040. Interestingly, a lot of companies are building electric cars now. Volvo is, BMW, and I think that Norway is actually banning. Yeah, here we go. The penetration of electric cars is highest in Norway. The country has planned to allow only 100% electric cars to be sold by 2025, The Guardian reported. The Netherlands is also planning to ban petrol and diesel cars by 2025, while some federal states in Germany are planning to phase out fossil fuel-driven cars by the year 2030. So there we see Europe leading the charge, doing what the U.S. is too scared to do, going electric. Interestingly, oilprice.com reporting today that, actually on the 25th, a couple days old, the electric car industry is facing a looming supply shortage. Supplies of what? Lithium. Lithium is the new oil, goes the saying in electric vehicle circles. If you haven't heard the catchy maxim, it means that new age batteries made from lithium are the energy world's in thing. By extension, a tank of gasoline containing a cocktail of carbon and hydrogen atoms is passé. Think back to the early 1900s. It's like an oil man wearing spats and a fedora walking into a cowboy bar saying, oil is the new horse hay. Okay? Oh, lithium. It sucks the way they mine that. Certainly not the most sustainable element, but that seems to be the way the world is going. Right? I'd love it if we all lived in cities where we could just ride bicycles everywhere. We didn't really need to have our own personal vehicles. But sadly, it's kind of built into the system at this point. And I don't know. I think it's probably smart to keep an eye on what lithium does in the world of commodities. The assault on cash going on. Bloomberg asking us, why can't Americans ditch checks? Encouraging people to use online payments, get off cash, get off checks. Swedish government on verge of collapse. I think that's a little overstated there. Netanyahu from Israel wants to expel Al Jazeera from Israel over unfavorable coverage. Remember as well, Al Jazeera based out of Qatar. The country of Qatar, like Russia, like Iran, like North Korea, like Venezuela, suffering economic sanctions right now. And one of the demands from Saudi Arabia, Israel, and other neighboring countries is that Qatar disband the Al Jazeera news agency. That's a direct attack on the free press. Al Jazeera puts out much more reliable news than your average American, or certainly your average Israeli news source. So it's sad to see that he's trying to kick Qatari broadcaster Al Jazeera out of Israel. That is blatant suppression of the media. The CIA can Trojan your Apple OS. According to Vault 7, 85% of the world's smartphones, all the Samsungs, everything running Android has been weaponized by the CIA. This is a funny story. Ransomware operators now have customer service departments just like legit companies. If you don't know what ransomware is, it's where you get hacked, they encrypt all your files so you can't do anything on your own computer, and then they demand that you give them bitcoins or some other, some untraceable currency in order to restore access to your files. Well, these companies are kind of becoming acceptable or accepted. The internet is constantly evolving, and the same is true in how ransomware makers operate. At present, cybercriminals thrive not only by producing malicious software, but also by making it seem as though they are legit businesses through customer service staff. Okay, makes you wonder if like these rogue ransomware operators can shut down your whole operation, like a whole company or a whole country even's operation. They were going after Eastern European countries a couple months ago, and it was really serious. They shut down hospitals and stuff because they encrypted all their files and you couldn't access medical records, for example. So it's pretty disturbing that this technology is out there and that this stuff is becoming more mainstream. And closing out today from MarketWatch, why you may not get grandchildren. Millennials are too worried about climate change to reproduce. Okay? Climate change, the whole climate change agenda is designed to scare the shit out of us, make us feel disempowered and guilty, right? We're all stuck in the system currently where we need to use fossil fuels just to get by, right? Coal-powered power plants, petroleum-powered cars, a food system that uses an insane amount of fossil fuels to produce food, which grows naturally with just sunlight and water, good soil, right? So, but it's sad. They're calling the millennials baby doomers. Our parents, my parents from the late 40s, early 50s were called the baby doomers. Now they're calling the millennials baby doomers. Why? Because they're depressed. Why? Well, it's probably because the mainstream media feeds us all this deceptive, discouraging, distracting, depressing, divisive information all the time. Okay? I can't stress that enough. Climate change is not going to kill you. The weather is not going to kill you unless somebody's playing God with it through geoengineering. Okay? CO2 is non-toxic. I just blew a whole bunch of CO2 into the camera right there. Yeah, we should get off fossil fuels. Yeah, we should stop, emitting all these greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. But it is not the major driver of the climate change we're seeing today. Covert geoengineering programs, global admitted weather modification programs by dozens, if not hundreds, of entities out there are affecting the climate much more than CO2. If you really want to understand climate change, you got to learn about clouds. Any human activities that affect water vapors' behavior in the atmosphere drastically impact the climate much more than the gradual increase of CO2, a trace greenhouse gas. So look into it if you haven't already, but the point is, don't be afraid. Don't let the mainstream media get you down. If you want to have kids and you can support them, have some kids. Is the world really overpopulated, or do we just need a new lifestyle? Do we just need to unleash suppressed technologies that, like I said at the beginning of this video, rendered fossil fuels obsolete 130 years ago? Those are the questions I ask, and I hope you ask questions of your own every day, because the answers are out there. We just got to find them. On that note, I can't see your comments. I got 63 comments. I haven't seen a single one. Haven't seen a single like go flying across the bottom here. So I'm getting no feedback from my audience today. I'm flying blind, but I don't care. Thank you all for tuning in. Please like, please share, and please subscribe to notifications. I really appreciate all of you. We still got 30 viewers going into the 103rd minute or the 63rd minute of this broadcast. I can't thank you enough for tuning in. From all of us here at Wake Up News, stay informed, but stay positive. Stay aware, but stay active. Enjoy your life. We don't need to be miserable. We don't need to worry. And arguably, like the clown Winston Churchill once said, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. But on that note, I'm signing off. Thank you all once again. From me, from Zach, the founder of Wake Up News, everybody else, we really appreciate you. Help us get to 500,000 followers, right? And another thing, we're thinking about putting on a contest to help us design a new logo. Anybody out there got graphic design work, you think you can tap into what the essence of what Wake Up News is, please help us design a logo. And I promise you will enjoy the prize if you do. So finally, Wordy me signing off. Y'all take care. One love. Peace.